Hello, everybody, and welcome to Suspects and Spirits. I'm Taylor Seraphin, and I just hit 1,000 downloads. I can't believe it. I'm so excited. Thank you, guys. Are you freaking kidding me? I saw that and I got so excited. You guys rock. Like, I honestly need to thank all of you guys who listen because you're the whole reason that I have those. How insane is that? Almost 3 months exactly. I launched on May 28th. I hit 1,000 downloads on Wednesday, August 27th. Freaking wild nuts bananas. I really appreciate all the love and support you guys have shown. Genuinely could not do it without you. I really love doing this. Like, if I could make this my full-time job, I would. But, gotta pay the bills. Also, I love my class this year. They're the freaking sweetest. I adore them. They wild, but they're sweet. Little Sour Patch Kids, which, like, me too. I can totally be a Sour Patch Kid as well. I can get a little bitter sometimes too. I think we all can. But then we just have to remember the wise words of Phoebe Buffay. Get out of the bitter barn and play in the hay, right? I will always feel like her and Joey should have ended up together. I know. I love Mike. Don't get me wrong. Love Paul Rudd. But I just feel in my soul that Phoebe and Joey were like meant to be together. I was a little bit sad when they didn't end up together, but that's okay. In my brain, they're together. So that's all that really matters. But anyways, yeah, thank you guys for helping me get to 1,000 downloads. Some of my friends were like, what does that mean? Like, woo, so happy for you. But like, what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that it's fucking cool. And second of all, it means I can potentially monetize now, which is also cool. Will it happen? I mean, who knows? Anything is possible. Just look around. Weird things happen every day. Aliens may invade first. And honestly, I would welcome them with open arms and plead with them to take my family and I with them back to the mothership because what is happening out here is just too much sometimes. In other news, Tay-Tay is engaged. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are finally engaged. I called it. Basically a psychic. I love them so much. I've been a fan of theirs since they started dating. I'm a Swiftie and a sports girly. I am an Eagles fan. Therefore, by proxy, I am also a Chiefs fan because, like, how can you not be? I love Jason and therefore I love Travis. They both seem so, like, goofy and sweet, like giant teddy bears who want to make friendship bracelets and aren't afraid to laugh at themselves. And Taylor, I mean, come on. Taylor Swift is Tay-Tay. We go hard for her. She was a very big part of my formative years, so I adore her. And it's so funny, too, when people find out that I love Taylor Swift, they're like, what? You're a Swiftie? Okay, Wednesday. I've had people in my life call me Wednesday for a very long time. Now that I'm blonde, my friend at work kind of jokes that like I'm not her Wednesday anymore. I'm like, no, I'm still Wednesday in my soul. It's okay. Just the hair has changed. But yeah, they always get confused. They're like, what? I thought you liked Paramore. I thought you were into like emo shit and My Chemical Romance. And then other friends who know my other interests are like, what? I thought you liked Tupac and Snoop Dogg. And yes, I say yes to all of it. I listen to Garth Brooks. I listen to Jimmy Buffett. I listen to everything. I am polyamorous. I love country music. I love rock music. I love soul. I love R&B. I also sing. I play guitar. I write songs. I write poetry. Currently writing a book. I have a true crime podcast. I'm a teacher. I love Harry Potter. I was a varsity athlete in multiple sports. I read avidly and I hate seafood. So there you go. Now you know a little bit more about me. I listen to all music genres. Just, carnival of chaos over here. A whole lot of fun. I do everything and have many interests. The beauty of having ADHD is feeling like you can do everything all at once and multitask like a pro. But then some days we also feel like we cannot do anything and we are couch potatoes, and that's okay too. ADHD paralysis is very real. Anyone who has it probably nodding your head like, yep, I feel you. It's either I get it all done right now or no, I can wait. Like we're expert procrastinators. So, we aren't lazy though. We're just overstimulated. We crash out sometimes because our brains are so loud. You guys would be just so overwhelmed and confused if you lived in my head. I got like 30 tabs open. There's dog videos, movie quotes. Can't figure out where the music's coming from, but it's a good time. And I mean, hey, here I am, 1,000 downloads later. So you guys must like it. You're the best. I will say that I have learned how to quiet that noise a little bit better. Magnesium, lifesaver. My Rise coffee, also a lifesaver, could not live without it. It's literally like a cloud lifts and I can just focus. Those mushrooms in that coffee are magical and not those mushrooms though. Not those. Like normal ones. My coffee has normal mushrooms, not magical mushrooms. I'm not out here tripping balls. I'm crazy enough as it is. I don't need no help. Could you imagine? Oh my God. As a teacher, I would get fired. Oh man, they think they have to worry about Irish coffee. They got another thing coming. Gonna be out here teaching the kids about color sounds. Oh no, that was a joke. Don't fire me. This economy is no joke. I need money. I mean, this economy is a joke, but it's not a funny one. Well, anyways, let's get into today's story. Grab your drink, get comfy, fold that laundry, maybe just prepare yourselves because today's case is one of those stories that starts with a teenager just trying to, find her place in the world and ends in a way that none of us wish it would. This story comes with a very big disclaimer. Listener discretion is advised. I do not say that lightly. It's going to get really dark. So please just buckle up. Today, we are going to be talking about the murder of Adrianne Reynolds. She was a bright, outgoing 16-year-old with a big voice, big dreams, and honestly, just the teenage struggles that a lot of us can probably relate to. She wanted to be liked. She wanted to fit in. She wanted friends who just got her, We all wanted those people who felt like they just understood us. We all wanted to be a part of something when we were in high school, maybe even still now. And sadly, that search for belonging pulled her toward the exact people who would end up destroying her. So let's rewind a bit. I want to start off with who Adrianne really was, because to understand this case, you have to start with her, not just the crime. We want to understand the victims and we definitely want to remember them and honor their memory. So let's get into who Adrianne was. Adrianne Lee Reynolds was born on September 12th, 1988, making her a Virgo. We love a Virgo. My oldest sister is a Virgo. I have many friends who are Virgos. Love them so much. Her mom, Carolyn Franco, was just 16 years old at the time when she had her. She was suddenly having to raise a baby while working full time at a convenience store just to get by. So, a baby raising a baby. It's hard, but it's not impossible. Money was tight. Carolyn was barely scraping by. She was making just enough for, diapers and food. And it quickly became clear to her that this was not a sustainable situation at the time. Eventually, Adrianne was adopted by her grandmother and her grandmother's husband, Tony Reynolds. Now, Tony is going to be a really important person in this story, so keep his name in mind. Adrianne and Tony built a beautiful bond that stuck through all the ups and downs in her life. Even when Tony and Adrianne's grandmother eventually split up, Adrianne's relationship with her grandmother kind of faded a little bit from the record, but Tony never disappeared. He remarried a woman named Joanne, and together they remained a very steady presence in Adrianne's world, even while she was bounced back and forth between homes. Sometimes she would be with her mom, Carolyn, and sometimes she would be with Tony and Joanne. So it sounds like Tony was just a really wonderful person, wonderful man, amazing grandfather. To me, that sounds like that wasn't just her grandmother's boyfriend. That was her grandpa. He helped her, he helped raise her. He truly loved her. He didn't abandon her in any way. Now, as a little kid, Adrianne was described as very outgoing, funny, and full of personality. Again, Virgo queen. She also had a talent that made her stand out, her singing voice. She dreamed of trying out for American Idol one day, and apparently she was good enough that people around her actually thought that she had a real shot. She would belt out Amazing Grace around the house until she nailed it, and it became her signature song at school talent shows. I love watching shows like American Idol and just seeing the raw talent. It's really such a beautiful thing. But as talented and outgoing as Adrienne was, she actually really struggled in school. It started around the age 12 when her appendix burst and she had to go through a really long recovery. She fell behind in her schoolwork and she just never fully caught up. This is just a side note. My sister's appendix actually burst when she was in high school. I was in middle school and it was very scary. It was very sudden. I remember having to leave. I was up in Tucson for softball practice, and my mom got a call that my sister was going to the hospital. And I was like, what is happening? What's going on? So we all hopped in the car and drove back home to Sierra Vista. It was a very scary situation. And I mean, I think they did it like orthoscopically, where they make like the little holes and they go in and they take out the appendix, which is so tiny. It's crazy how such a tiny thing can cause such big problems. You know what I mean? It's kind of like men, you know? Like tiny they got a tiny thing, they cause big problems. There's basically an appendix. You don't even need them. Sorry, not that's not about my husband. I love him. Oh my god. Taylor, shut up. Okay, that was meant to be about other people. Please don't speculate about my relationship. That was not about my husband. I just meant in most relationships, sometimes men can be like an appendix. Okay? All right. Anyways, my sister had her appendix taken out, and I remember, you know, it was just very hard on her body. So, yeah, you would fall behind in schoolwork and probably find it pretty difficult to catch up. And on top of all of that, for Adrienne, things with her mom, Carolyn, started getting really tense. Carolyn had been, so young when she had Adrienne that she really missed out on the whole normal teenage experience. No prom, no carefree weekends, just diapers and work. So she wanted Adrienne to make better choices and to have more opportunities. She was just trying to get Adrienne to, have a better life than she had, which is, I think, completely understandable. Most parents, that's all we want for our kids. But Adrienne, like a lot of teens, she was laser focused on fitting in. And let's be real, fitting in as a teenager can sometimes mean making the exact choices your parents beg you not to. Can confirm. By middle school, Carolyn thought Adrienne was just hanging around what she bluntly called a quote, tough, druggy crowd, end quote. Which, yeah, at 12 years old, that's alarming. Adrienne wasn't necessarily a bad kid, but she was very impressionable. And when her friends didn't care about school, neither did she. Skipping class, not doing homework, all of it became part of her routine. Mother daughter fights became constant. Homework, friends, choices, you name it, they argued about it. At one point, Carolyn admitted that she was just at her wits' end. And Adrienne wanted more independence, but Carolyn wanted that, parental control. And so both of them were really stubborn with each other. So Carolyn ended up reaching out to Tony for help. After a long talk, they came up with a plan that maybe a fresh start was the answer. If Adrienne couldn't ditch the bad influences on her own, then distance would do it for her. And that decision, that is what set everything else in this story into motion. And I mean, I totally get why they did that. Sometimes removing the child from the situation can be very beneficial. So in late 2004, right after Adrienne turned 16, she packed up her life in Texas and moved north to live with Tony and Joanne in East Moline, Illinois. Now, this was not some like tiny farm town in the middle of nowhere. It's part of the Quad Cities, right on the Illinois-Iowa border, about 2.5 hours west of Chicago. It's smaller, but not like a podunk town. Families tended to move there for a quieter life, and crime wasn't particularly high, so it was a pretty safe place to live. On paper, it seemed like the perfect place for Adrienne to reset, kind of start over, start fresh. But the move wasn't exactly smooth because Adrienne had fallen so far behind in school back in Texas, she had 0 credits to transfer over, literally none. And every high school in town basically said, sorry, we can't take her. So Tony and Joanne had to get creative, which that's really sad. I mean, she had her appendix out, she had some health issues, obviously a lot going on with her mom and all of that. Just kind of sucks, right? If she hadn't have ended up going to this school, I probably wouldn't even be telling this story. But here we are. Tony and Joanne ended up enrolling her in a program at Black Hawk College, which sounds fancy, but was actually like an alternative education program for high school students who needed a different path. It was designed for kids working toward getting a GED instead of a traditional diploma. Only about 80 students were enrolled, so the classes were much smaller and more personal. So Tony and Joanne thought that's perfect, right? Less distraction, more structure, better chance to succeed. Adrienne even got herself a part time job at a fast food place called Checkers. And for a minute, it looked like things might finally be stabilizing. And apparently, Checkers is like a very popular fast food place. I'm from Arizona, so I don't really know about Checkers, but in my research, it seems like a hoppin' place. So Adrienne seemed like she was finally settling in, but, and you knew the but was coming. Okay, that's why we're here. It didn't take long for Adrienne to start gravitating toward the wrong crowd again. Because sometimes, no matter how far you move, drama just has a way of finding you. And by that, I mean sometimes teenagers just thrive in chaos. They thrive in drama and they are drawn to it. And that is exactly what happened with Adrienne. Within weeks of starting at Blackhawk, Adrienne had set her sights on one girl. There was one girl in particular that she was like, I have to be friends with her. And that girl was Sarah Kolb. Sarah wasn't really your like stereotypical popular girl. She wasn't like a Regina George walking around in pink miniskirts. Instead, she had this very edgy goth vibe, which, we love it. I personally love to wear black. Has nothing to do with the choices that were made here. That's just how she dressed. The goth community does not claim Sarah. So, Sarah loved to dress in all black clothing. She had piercings, heavy metal playlists. She reminded Adrienne of the friends that, she'd left behind in Texas. Which, like, when I read about this in my research, I started thinking, like, were her friends in Texas really that bad? Just because someone dresses differently or has like tattoos and piercings doesn't mean they're a bad person. I will never understand that stereotype. Like, I know worse people who go sit in church every Sunday. Be so for real right now. That has nothing to do with the way somebody behaves. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe there were issues that I'm not aware of. It just kind of seemed like, they were making some assumptions and maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know. I wasn't there. Just speculation. Okay. So in Adrian's mind, if she could get in with Sarah and her crew, she would be golden. She was like, if I can be friends with her, I'm going to be so cool. That's all Adrienne wanted. She wanted to just fit in. And Sarah had two very close companions. Her current boyfriend, Sean McKittrick, I think I'm saying that right, McKittrick, and her ex turned best friend, Corey Gregory. And I say ex turned best friend because they dated and then they were friends still. I don't know. It was weird. It was a weird setup. Boyfriend and ex hanging out together like that. Somehow it worked for them. I don't know. It's giving How I Met Your Mother, but like not funny and not cool. Adrienne basically threw herself into their world. She wanted Sarah's approval. She wanted to be in the inner circle. And eventually she did win them over. Suddenly she was spending all of her time with them, like almost every single day. But Tony, Adrienne's adoptive dad, he took one look at Sarah and said, nope. He literally called her a quote, thug and a freak, end quote. Not great. Not a great thing to say, Tony. We don't call people that. But Sarah, she deserves it. Normally, I would say just you can't judge somebody based on how they look, but maybe it was her vibe. Maybe it was just like her personality because honestly, fuck Sarah in this story. I said it. Okay. And I won't take it back because she is the worst. So, anyways, not great thing to say, but if they're truly not a good person, then yeah, for sure, get your kid away from them. And for Tony, it was more than just the way Sarah looked. I guess it was, he really hated that Adrienne's look started to shift under Sarah's influence. Adrienne had always kind of dressed with the trends. Some of her friends back home dressed more goth or alternative. But under Sarah's influence, for whatever reason, she started to conform a little bit more. She wore darker clothes. She cut her hair really short. She wore very heavy eyeliner, listened to metal music, replacing her old, R&B playlists with whatever Sarah told her she should listen to. And again, there's nothing wrong with loving heavy metal or wearing black. Most of us have had a goth phase or a scene phase or emo, whatever, in high school, and some of us never grew out of it. Guilty right here. But Tony saw the influence as a red flag. He did not like how much influence Sarah had over Adrian, which I think is fair. He thought Sarah was just pulling Adrian in the wrong direction. And unfortunately, he wasn't wrong. So here's where things really start to just spiral out of control. Adrian began to realize that she wasn't just drawn to Sarah as a friend. She was actually attracted to her. And Adrian was, figuring out her sexuality, coming to terms with being bisexual. And Sarah, she liked both boys and girls too. So while Sarah was dating Sean, there was also this kind of like tension building between her and Adrian. They wrote notes to each other, not texts, not AIM messages. Yes, this was 2004. AIM was alive and well, but they wrote actual handwritten notes. And we remember those days, right? You had to fold them all fancy. Oh man, we were so crafty with the way we folded those notes. But the notes that Adrian and Sarah were exchanging, they started turning a little bit flirty. And whether Sarah and Adrian ever actually hooked up kind of just depends on who you ask. Some say that they did, others insist it was just flirty energy and that, it never went any further. Either way, Adrian liked the attention, and Sarah liked being the center of it. So it just sounds like, teenagers who were trying to figure out who they were. But of course, this little love triangle, which was like actually more of a square, if you include Corey, it was a ticking time bomb. Things pretty much exploded after a house party when Adrian was flirting with some guys and Sarah got very jealous and eventually found out that Adrian had actually slept with one of them. Why this was any of Sarah's business, I don't know. Like, you're not dating her. As far as we know, at least they weren't dating. Why do you care? So, a huge fight ensued. Insults were thrown. Sarah called Adrian every name in the book. And if you ask me, that's not a friend. It's one thing if your friend isn't like the guy that you hooked up with or you're trying to date. That's different. And they're like, oh, girl, no. Nope. Let's find you a better guy. Like, you could do so much better. But that's not how this was. This was purely about Sarah wanting control and wanting to be the center of Adrian's universe. And then, in a very teenager logic type move, Adrian decided that she was going to sleep with another guy the very next night, which it makes me really sad to think that she felt like she had to do that to prove herself or prove a point or feel loved. Yeah, teenager logic is not great. She's just seeking validation. And when Sarah found out about this, she completely lost it. And this was not just jealousy anymore. This was war. And if you've ever been in a girl fight or a girl war or girls talking shit, you know that nothing good comes of this. Girls are vicious. But this story takes it to a whole other level. So by December 2004, remember, Adrian had only been in Illinois for like a month at this point. The friend group's drama was already at full boil. After their screaming match, Adrian kept calling, kept begging her to forgive her, and Sarah would sometimes pick up the phone just to scream at her and then hang up again. Other times, she ignored her completely. All red flags. This entire relationship is a red flag. Ugh, just the control issues here are just insane. The codependency. Oh my goodness. Now, most of us would probably, take the hint at that point, like friendship over, time to move on. But Adrian really just was not ready to let go, which is very sad. She desperately wanted to fit in. She desperately wanted to be Sarah's friend. She wrote Sarah letters, like old school dramatic teenage letters. Things like, quote, "Why do you hate me so much? Why do you want me to die?" End quote. And look, I mean, okay, we've all written something like cringeworthy as teenagers. Very, very guilty here. But most of our notes didn't end up tied to a murder investigation. So, it's very clear that Adrian here she's trying to get some attention from Sarah. And despite Sarah constantly tearing her down, and even this part's really awful, she even told Adrian at one point that she should just kill herself, which is like, don't ever fucking say that to somebody. Just don't. That's a terrible thing to say. Even with this, Adrian kept trying to win her back. That need for validation for Sarah's approval, she was hooked. So, Adrian persisted, but Sarah was still refusing to answer. And still seeking some kind of validation, Adrian turned her attention elsewhere. She was actually turning to Sarah's ex, Corey Gregory. Adrian and Corey had hung out one on one a few times, and apparently they had even kissed a couple of times. Nothing more, just kissing. But to Sarah, this was nuclear. She was like, oh, first you're hooking up with these guys when you're flirting with me, and now you want to hook up with my ex boyfriend? Like, Sarah, he's your ex boyfriend. Who cares? This Sarah girl has like way too much ego. I cannot with her. Sarah had already been furious about Adrian hooking up with, random guys at the party because they were flirting. They weren't dating, but they were flirting. But Corey was different, apparently, because Corey was hers. Even if he wasn't hers anymore, he was her ex, her sidekick, her little lost puppy who still followed her around, hoping she would take him back. Sarah loved that control. And now Adrian was, quote, taking him too, end quote. Ugh, I know. I know. Oh, over a boy? Are you freaking for real? Nothing is worth that. The story is just wild. So this caused, more rage, more jealousy, and more chaos. Corey's parents actually saw how obsessed he was with Sarah, and even after she dumped him, he just orbited around her like a satellite. He wrote her letters saying he loved her and that he couldn't get over her. And Sarah, she didn't seem to care much about him romantically anymore, but she definitely liked the power. So when Corey started showing interest in Adrian, Sarah saw red. Not because she wanted Corey, but because she didn't want Adrian to have him. Again, I say, why do you care? Let people date who they want to date. That is so stupid. You're not dating him anymore. And now I get girl code. Like, we don't date our friends' exes. We just don't do that. Hard pass. And in a small town, the dating pool it's small. Okay, I can say that coming from a small town. A lot of us dated the same guys. There was one guy in particular that I think all of us dated. And it's different in a small town, and it's different when you're a teenager. So yes, girl code, but at the same time, they're teenagers. Statistics say they probably are not going to get married. And you know what? If you ended up with your high school sweetheart, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. I'm sure your love is beautiful. But in this story, that is not what happens. She clearly didn't care about Corey anymore. She just wanted the control, so she might not look like Regina George, but she's definitely given Regina George vibes. And by January 2005, Sarah's treatment of Adrian had gone from, the cold shoulder to full on bullying. She humiliated Adrian. She screamed at her. She made her cry. She told her to kill herself. And yet, Adrian kept trying to be her friend. And while we can all see the flaw in this, she is a teenager, and teenagers do not have a developed frontal lobe, and they just want people to like them. They want to be accepted. So we can't really judge Adrian too much for just wanting her friend to like her. So while Adrian is still trying to be her friend, her and Corey were finding more common ground. Both of them had been wrapped around Sarah's finger, and both of them had been hurt by her. And now they were kind of bonding over, music and the fact that they really didn't need her approval anymore. So, of course, this drove Sarah even more insane. And she started talking, like half joking, half not, about wanting to kill Adrian. Friends brushed it off. Friends were thinking, oh, she's just venting. But Sarah even wrote about it in her diary on January 21st, 2005. Now, I'm going to read what Sarah wrote in her diary. And I also just want to tell you that if someone ever says they're going to kill someone, overreact. Just overreact. It's fine. Worst that could happen is that it doesn't happen and you overreacted. Underreacting or not doing anything is how these types of situations happen. So Sarah wrote in her diary, quote, "Stupid bitch needs to back up off my Kool-Aid. I'll fucking kill her," end quote. No, I know. Okay. The Kool-Aid reference almost makes it sound silly and petty, like something from a very cheesy movie. But when you add in the fact that she actually is following through with this, suddenly that diary entry is very scary. Now, on the very same day that Sarah wrote that diary entry, she actually extended an olive branch to Adrian, which was kind of weird, just seemingly out of nowhere. She invited Adrian and Corey to go grab some Taco Bell with her and Sean, like old times. And for Adrian, who had spent weeks trying to get back into Sarah's good graces, this was huge. She was thrilled. It felt like maybe all that drama was finally behind them and then they could all be friends again and just move on. Except this is a true crime podcast, so we know that that is not the case. So that night that Sarah had invited Adrian and Corey to get Taco Bell with her and Sean, Adrian actually did not come home. She was supposed to work her shift at Checkers, and she was normally very reliable about work. Adrian may not have liked school and things like that, but she was very good about work and she was always on time. But for this shift in particular, she never showed up. So Tony and Joanne immediately knew something was off. They drove to her job only to find out she'd been scheduled but never clocked in. They ended up calling the police and reporting her missing because they knew Adrian. They knew that she may not like school that much, but she enjoyed having a job. She enjoyed making her own money. She enjoyed her independence. And that's exactly what the job gave her. So they did everything right. They called the police. They reported her missing. But of course, like they do so many freaking times in these cases, the police brushed it off as a runaway situation. Adrian was 16. She had just moved states. She was fighting with her friends. She was dressing, quote, goth. And the police decided, she must have just taken off. Teenagers, you know. But Tony and Joanne did not believe it for a second. Adrian hadn't packed anything. She hadn't grabbed her paycheck. She hadn't said a word about leaving. She hadn't threatened anything. Something was wrong. They could feel it. And sadly, they were right. So, while the police dragged their feet, Tony and Joanne drove around town themselves. They were just desperate to find her. They were like, Adrian had no bag, no clothes, no cash, not even her last paycheck with her. If you're a teenager about to run away, the first thing that you would want to grab is money. And Adrian didn't really have any. She had just started working at Checkers. She had not been there very long. She certainly did not make enough money to just up and leave on her own. They even went as far as to consult a psychic. And I know, desperate times, right? There's some differing opinions about psychics in true crime work. Some people think that they can be very helpful. Some people think that they are very harmful. It's very few and far between that we find a psychic who can actually help. But this psychic told them that Adrian was alive in a basement somewhere. And while this was comforting in the moment, it was ultimately useless and also not true. And look, I believe in psychics. I think there's a very, very small population of people who do have those types of gifts. And then the rest of them just kind of just take advantage of people, which is very uncool. So this turned out to be no help at all, but it did show, their desperation to just find Adrian. And meanwhile, the police started talking to Adrian's friends at Blackhawk. Over and over, they heard the same story. Adrian had gone to lunch with Sarah, Corey, and Sean that Friday, but she never came back. So the cops decided that they would bring Sarah in for questioning. And Sarah told them, yeah, they had all gone to Taco Bell. And after lunch, she said Adrian asked to be dropped off near McDonald's close to her house, not at home, because Tony was strict about her being around boys and that she didn't want him to see her climbing out of a car with Corey and Sean. So, I mean, okay. It seemed plausible, except for the part that Tony was a truck driver and he'd already left for his shift at 4 a.m. that morning and wouldn't be home until late that night. And Adrian knew that. She knew their schedules. She also knew that Joanne was working that night too. So, who exactly was she hiding from then? Things weren't quite adding up. So, when detectives started to press Sarah a little bit harder, her story began to wobble a bit. First, she admitted she didn't actually like Adrianne at all, which, I mean, girl, that's not something you confess during a missing person investigation. But okay, I'm glad you're that stupid. But then she changed her tune again. She said, yes, they went to Taco Bell, but she and Adrian had gotten into an argument about Corey, of course. And Sarah claimed that Adrian wanted to talk it out and things got heated, that they argued in the parking lot and maybe even fought a little, but then they cooled off and dropped Adrian at McDonald's and went on with their day. That was her story. So next, police were like, okay, there's a guy named Corey involved. Let's talk to Corey. And surprise, surprise, his story matched Sarah's almost word for word, which, I mean, if we're being honest, usually that is a sign of it being a rehearsed story, right? But Corey did add one detail. He said that Sarah had gotten physical, that she grabbed Adrian's hair and whispered in her ear until Sean, Sarah's boyfriend, told her to stop. Why would you grab her hair and whisper in her ear? The fuck is that? That is gross to me. I don't like that. Get out of my personal space. So, when all of this whispering and pulling of hair was happening and Sean telling Sarah to stop, Sarah apparently told Sean, quote, if you don't like it, get out of my car, end quote. And so Sean did. He literally walked away from the scene. But Corey admitted that he felt a little awkward, like the fight was partly about him. But instead of stepping in, he just sat back. He smoked a cigarette and just let it happen. Not exactly hero energy. Maybe tell her to stop. Maybe get Adrian out of the car. Like, someone do something. Now, apparently, Tony and Joanne had no idea that Sarah and Adrian had supposedly made up that day. From their perspective, Sarah was the only person that Adrian had ongoing drama with. So when detectives asked if they knew anyone who might hurt her, they did not hesitate. They said, Sarah, and good for them, because they were right. Even Sarah's classmates said that her sudden reconciliation with Adrian seemed very off. It was very out of character. When Sarah was mad at somebody and cut them off, she cut them off for good. So this struck even classmates as very strange. What was even weirder was that same morning she had been trash talking her and threatening her. And then by lunchtime, she was all, let's hang out. Like, okay, let's not. That is red flag city. And Sarah is the mayor. But despite their doubts, police didn't have much to go on. No body, no clear evidence. They still were leaning toward the runaway theory until Corey started to crack. At first, he stuck to the script, but after a few days, the pressure was starting to get to him. He told his parents that he wanted a lawyer, not because he'd done anything wrong, which he insisted, but because Sarah had already gotten one. So his parents obliged, and later that night, Corey had a complete meltdown. He broke down crying, apologizing over and over. And finally, his dad just asked him straight out, did something happen to Adrian in that car? And Corey just sat there and nodded his head. And just like that, the whole story came spilling out. When Corey finally confessed, he told the police the real story. What went down in Sarah's car in that Taco Bell parking lot. At first, it started out the way that Sarah described, an argument that got physical, that Adrian and Sarah started choking each other, both fighting for control. And Adrian broke free long enough to punch Sarah hard in the nose, which drew some blood. And that is when Sarah snapped. She grabbed a wooden stick that Corey later tried to frame as a self-defense stick. But as we now know, that is complete bullshit because Sarah started beating Adrian with it. And somehow Adrian ended up in the back seat and Sarah climbed on top of her and started squeezing her throat. So very clear now that she was not in self-defense at all. Adrian was literally under her. She was not posing a threat, but now Sarah was posing a threat to her. This wasn't just two girls slapping each other anymore. Sarah had the leverage, the weight, the upper hand, and Corey admitted that at one point, he even held Adrian down. What the fuck, Corey? Apparently, Adrian fought very hard, but eventually she stopped moving. At first, Sarah and Corey thought that, she just passed out. They lit cigarettes and waited for her to wake up. But when she didn't, the reality sank in. Adrian was not moving. She was not breathing. She was dead. And they were just fucking sitting there, smoking their cigarettes after choking her. If that wasn't enough for you, here is where their teenage logic kicks in. And by logic, I mean the dumbest string of decisions possible. They couldn't call the police, apparently. They knew that no one would believe this was a quote, accident, because it wasn't. So they had to hide the body. The problem was they were in a very busy Taco Bell parking lot in the middle of the day, and moving Adrian into the trunk would draw far too much attention. So instead, they drove off with her still in the back seat. The plan was to take her to Sarah's grandparents' farm and bury her there. But it was January in Illinois and the ground was frozen solid, so couldn't dig. No digging possible. Plan B, go to the cops? Nope. They decided to cremate her. They wrapped Adrian in a tarp, poured gasoline over her, and lit her on fire. But here's the thing, and they don't realize that bonfires don't burn like crematoriums do. So they sat there waiting for her to disperse into ashes, and she didn't, because that's not how that works. So realizing that the fire wasn't working, Sarah decided that Adrian's body would have to be cut up. Yeah, I know. But neither she or Corey could stomach the thought of actually doing it. You just killed someone. Can you stomach the thought of that? So because they couldn't stomach this, apparently they called in reinforcements. And by they, I mean Sarah. And this is where the story veers into just an absolute nightmare. It's about to get very gruesome. Sarah reached out to a kid named Nate Gaudette, a 16-year-old who wasn't even part of their friend group. And you might be asking, why him? He's not even in their friend group. Why are they involving more people? What is going on? Well, she called him because he had a reputation for being into blood, gore, and killing animals. Now, you would think that most teenagers would be like, absolutely not. Are you out of your fucking mind? And they'd run away and call the cops because that's terrifying. To call someone and tell them, hey, I have a dead body here. I tried to burn her. Now I need her cut up. No fucking way. No way. So for them to call this guy, apparently that meant he would be willing. And disturbingly, Sarah was right. Nate was totally on board. He showed up the next day with a saw. So I guess before starting, the three of them smoked some weed. And then Nate got to work while Sarah and Corey just sat there watching. They just sat there watching him cut up a body. So fucking gross. What he did was just brutal. Ugh, okay, this is gonna get a little graphic. I'm gonna be explaining what Nate did to Adrian in order for it to make sense about how they were caught and what the police found later. So if you are very sensitive to graphic descriptions, please just fast forward a little bit. All right. So Nate ended up cutting off Adrian's head, her arms, her legs, and even sawed her torso in half. They then decided to dump half of her remains right there on the farm, and then the other half somewhere else. At one point, they stuffed her head and limbs into a garbage bag and tossed it in Sarah's trunk. And then they went to McDonald's. I'm sorry, did you hear me? I said they went to fucking McDonald's. They literally just stopped for food, eating double cheeseburgers with their friend's severed head in the trunk. Why? I don't know about you guys, but that detail makes me so sick to my stomach. I don't even know how they went and just ate food after that with her in the trunk. That is so beyond dehumanizing. This story is just forever engraved into my brain. I will never, ever be able to forget this story. And we shouldn't forget Adrianne because she did not deserve that. No one deserves that. Ugh. Now, after eating their McDonald's like psychopaths, finally, they went and they dumped the remaining pieces in a manhole at Black Hawk Historic Site, which was a local park. And they didn't even do a good job. I mean, thank God that they were dumb, but they didn't even hide it well. They just shoved it in there. Now, when Corey confessed, he led the police straight to this spot, and investigators found Adrian's remains in the manhole inside the bag. And this part is so sad. At 2 a.m., police knocked on Tony and Joanne's door to deliver the news that every parent, every family member, every grandma and grandpa just dreads. And they honestly didn't even need to hear the words. If the police are at your door at 2 a.m., it's not good news. They knew Adrianne was never coming home. Tony later said that he thinks every day about her fighting for her life in that car, about her gasping for air, and about the manhole where her body was discarded. It haunts this poor man, the grandmother, and the mother, Carolyn. And honestly, how could it not? It is so beyond awful. So, once Adrian's remains were recovered, the case moved pretty quickly. Police had Corey's confession and Sarah's diary, which remember, in that diary, she was threatening to kill Adrianne. And Nate Gaudette admitted to helping with the dismemberment. So the evidence was pretty overwhelming. But if you think Sarah and Corey were about to just hold hands and admit guilt and ride off to prison and serve their life sentences, I'm so sorry, you would be wrong. Because the moment it got real, they both turned on each other. None of us are surprised. Such a typical situation. So Sarah went first. Prosecutors painted her as their ringleader, which they were not wrong. The one who lured Adrianne out, the one who snapped in that Taco Bell parking lot, the one who called Nate to finish what she and Corey couldn't do. And the jury did not take long to see it their way. In 2006, Sarah Kolb was convicted of first-degree murder and concealment of a homicide. Her sentence was 48 years in prison, which means, barring any appeals, Sarah wouldn't be free until she's in her 60s. Sarah tried appealing, of course, and claimed that she didn't get a fair trial. She argued over technicalities and the usual song and dance, but none of it worked, and her conviction stood, as it should. And then Corey, who was not ice cold like Sarah was in court, no. Corey was a mess. He cried, he shook, he looked like a kid way in over his head because he was. He was a kid and he was in over his head. All of these kids were. What the hell are you all doing? But for Corey, the prosecution wasn't buying it. They were not into the whole, I was just along for the ride defense. Corey admitted that he helped hold Adrianne down. He admitted that he carried her body. He admitted that he sat there while Nate did the dismemberment. And he wasn't some innocent bystander. He was a part of it. In 2007, Corey Gregory was convicted of first-degree murder and concealment of a homicide. His sentence? 45 years, just 3 years less than Sarah. He later filed appeals and at one point even got a small break when his sentence was reduced slightly on a technicality. But nonetheless, Corey will not be out of there until he is in his late 50s. So let's talk about Nate now. The one who actually did the dismembering. Because Nate was a minor at the time, prosecutors offered him a plea deal. In exchange for testifying against Sarah and Corey, he pled guilty to concealment of a homicide. His sentence, you guys, his sentence for dismembering a body was 5 years in juvenile detention. That is all. And he was out by the age of 21. So, Adrian's killers got decades in prison, which they should have. They should. Okay, they should be in there for decades. But the kid who actually dismembered her and stuffed her into bags out before he could legally rent a car. And I mean, look, I get it. I get that the law treats minors differently. He didn't technically kill her, right? But 5 years for dismembering a body to conceal a homicide. Uh, I I don't even have words for that. So I'm just going to move on. The trials left the community in complete shock. East Moline was not the kind of place that people expected a teenage girl to be lured to Taco Bell, murdered, and then cut apart. Parents in the Quad Cities were suddenly looking at their kids' friends a little bit differently, which probably a good thing. Tony and Joanne were completely shattered. They had taken Adrianne in hoping to give her a better life, and within weeks, she was gone. Joanne said later that the hardest part wasn't just losing Adrianne, it was knowing how scared and betrayed she must have felt in her final moments. Ugh. Sarah, for her part, showed very little remorse. She's serving her time at Logan Correctional Center in Illinois, where she's reportedly had some disciplinary issues. And she's filed for motion after motion after motion, trying to get out early, but none have been successful. Corey has kept a lower profile in prison, but he too has tried appealing, claiming that Sarah manipulated him and that he was under her spell. And you know what? Maybe he was, but last I checked, their school wasn't Hogwarts, so probably not. At the end of the day, Adrianne is gone. And Corey, you didn't do anything to stop it. Adrianne's family has worked very hard to keep her memory alive beyond just the horror of her murder. Friends remember her laugh, her voice, her dreams of singing on stage. Her adoptive dad, Tony, said that he wants people to remember not just how she died, but, how she lived as a bubbly, funny, big hearted girl who just wanted nothing more than to belong. And that's what makes this case so gutting. She just wanted love and acceptance. She just wanted a seat at the table. And the people she trusted most, Sarah and Corey, turned out to be the ones who destroyed her. And Corey, who originally, said that all he did was help hold Adrianne down, he actually later admitted that during the fight, Sarah was choking Adrianne but couldn't finish the job. And Corey apparently helped finish strangling Adrianne using Sarah's belt. So Sarah did initiate the strangulation, but from Corey's account, he was the one who pulled the belt tight, actually causing Adrianne's death. So fuck you, Corey. Both of you guys. Both of you. And Nate.
Now, I should mention that Nate, he actually did end up passing away, so we don't really have to worry about him being out and about in society. When he was 23, after he was released, he got into a car accident and he died. So there's that. Karma, I guess. I mean, I'm glad he can't do that to anybody ever again. My goodness. What a horrific story.
Teen drama is supposed to be about breakups, like bad haircuts, embarrassing prom pictures. I don't know, not murder. You're supposed to be able to go to Taco Bell with your friends and not worry about them lighting you on fire and then cutting you up. I mean, what the hell? Teach your kids to self regulate, teach them techniques to manage their emotions because none of this was necessary. Okay, no one should ever lose their life because of a disagreement. In Adrian's case, the jealousy, the insecurity, the manipulation, it all snowballed into something so dark. And they can never take that back. Sarah wanted control, Corey wanted Sarah, Adrianne wanted friendship, and in the ugliest way possible, all three just collided. Adrian's story is a reminder that, these red flags in relationships, even teenage ones, are worth paying attention to. Manipulation, jealousy, threats, all of that, they don't just blow over. I mean, sometimes they do, but other times they escalate in ways that no one sees coming. Kids can be really mean as it is, and girls are just vicious. Don't bully people. We cannot let things get to this point. The part that scares me the most about this story is that we've all been there. Like, we've all had disagreements with friends or jealousy over boys who honestly were not even worth the trouble, but like nothing is worth this. I promise you. I promise you nothing is worth this. I mean, if you're listening, then you probably already know this, but our kids might not. So it's very important to pay attention to what's going on in their lives and to help empower them to distance themselves from people who may not have their best interest at heart and learn to set boundaries and stand firm in those boundaries, because not every friend is a friend and kids don't always see the red flags. But my goodness, this story is just so sad, so senseless. You could not pay me enough to be a teenager again and put up with that bullshit. No way. I liked parts of high school, but not enough to do it again. Hard pass. So that is our story for today. That is the very, very horrific and devastating story of the murder of Adrianne Reynolds. I think it's a good reminder to, all be more involved in our children's lives and just make sure that we know what's going on, because it's important and could be life-saving. But as awful as this story was, I bet your stories are fantastic. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's very hard to segue out of these things, but I do my best. So don't forget to send in your stories, suspectsandspiritspod@gmail.com. You can DM me, or you could even use the website, suspectsandspirits.com. I'm recording a Booze Clues very soon, so send in your creepy, your cryptid, or your criminal tales. I cannot wait to read them. Go follow the podcast where you follow things, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Go show it some love. Go ahead and also leave me a review. I would love to hear your thoughts about the podcast, about this episode or other episodes. Thank you to everyone who has left reviews so far. Let's keep them coming. Spooky season's coming up. Actually, it's already here. If you're me, it's already here. It's October. October. Okay. So go to the website and go buy some merch. Go enjoy it. There are little cute little ghosts on there and, witchy coven stuff on there. The shirts are actually really good quality. So go get some. They're wonderful and the hats fit really well. The stickers are so cute. And I'll be getting those sweaters up real soon for you guys. I did have some friends reach out and they were like, when are the sweaters going to be on there? Soon. It's hot as shit in Arizona right now. So I can't put sweaters up on the website yet, even though I wear sweaters literally every day in my house because it's like the freaking Arctic in here. And also my body just cannot like regulate temperature. I'm either always hot or I'm always cold. I'm like there's never an in between. I'm always cold in my house though. So I'm always in like sweaters and sweatpants and cozy socks. It's real cozy up in here. So yeah, go buy some merch, support the podcast in every way, shape, and form. Share this episode with a friend that you think needs to hear it, or a friend that you feel might enjoy it because they are just as twisted and messed up as the rest of us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for 1,000 downloads. You guys are the freaking best. And remember to trust your lizard brain. Until next time, goodbye.